You're on the Bible Forum. Are you a member of the Southern Baptist Convention? Do you know anything about them? There was a report this week. It's called the Capstone Report. I picked it up off of a website called pulpitandpen.org. But if you're a Southern Baptist, you know the name Russell Moore. Russell Moore is president of the Southern Baptist Convention's Baptist Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. And he has been for, at least a decade or more. Last week, which was the first week in November of 2019, Moore attacked conservative evangelical Christians and Southern Baptists during his appearance at the George Soros-funded National Immigration Forum. You do know who George Soros is, right? Nowhere in the article that I read about this does it explain who Soros is. It wondered me. George Soros is a wealthy benefactor of many social and political organizations. He has what is called an Open Society Foundation. It was formerly called the Open Society Institute. It's an international grant-making network. Open Society Foundations financially support civil society groups around the world with a stated aim of advancing justice, education, public health, and an independent media. Since 1989, Soros has spent billions of dollars funding organizations and initiatives devoted to promoting liberal democracy, independent media, good government, transparency, and pluralism. And that all across the former Soviet Union. In the United States, he's one of the biggest donors to the Democrat Party, along with other left-wing causes. Soros has also collected a gaggle of right-wing enemies, not the least of which is the current president of the United States. Soros was an early backer of MoveOn.org, the aggressively partisan left-wing organization which once published a full-page advertisement in the New York Times slandering General David Petraeus as General Betray Us. Last year, MoveOn published a guide entitled How to Bird Dog, providing its followers with tips on how to harass elected officials. Soros is also a major funder of Media Matters, a watchdog group founded by right-wing hitman turned left-wing hitman David Brock, whose stock in trade is the organized boycott of conservative media figures. And the list goes on. But Dr. Moore, the president of the Southern Baptist Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, appearing on a panel to promote civility at the Soros-funded National Immigration Foundation, ended up slandering evangelical Christians who were concerned about border security, concerned about promoting legal immigration. You're a Southern Baptist. Does that bother you? On Tuesday, November 12, 2019, the edition of Today's Issues with Tim Wildman, the show hosts were outraged at Russell Moore's slander of conservative Christians. Dr. Moore's remarks to Barack Obama's former faith outreach coordinator were among some of the more shocking. He is quoted as saying, "An evangelical Christian who despises immigrants is an evangelical Christian who is self-defeating and self-loathing, because most of the body of Christ on earth right now, not to mention heaven, is not white. It's not middle class. It's not American. Doesn't speak English." End of quote. Edward Vitagliano of AFA said, "I don't know a single evangelical Christian who favors securing the borders, who then also despises immigrants. Vitagliano called Russell Moore's statement a pack of lies. He demanded an apology from Dr. Moore on behalf of conservative Christians in general and the Southern Baptists in particular. And the sad part of all this is that leftist evangelicals are beginning to lie about us as much as the pagans, he said. That is a smear and a slander. Russell Moore ought to apologize. Russell Moore ought to apologize for it and apologize to the Southern Baptists whom he represents. Dr. Ray Pritchett was asked by Toast Tim Wildman his thoughts on the statement. He said, Russell Moore is of the category of persons who is very dangerous because he sounds very solid theologically when he talks. He seems to make sense. But if you really listen, he drops in distortions on everything. This is proof that all of it is intentional. He makes this into a racial issue because for evangelicals on the left and the Washington Post, who adore Russell Moore, this is the kind of stuff they live for. He said, I don't know a single evangelical Christian who believes in securing our borders who despises immigrants. Wildman pointed out, Southern Baptists, if you tithe, you pay for this guy. Vitagliano suggested he, Russell Moore, should be fired for these tactics. The panel reminded listeners that Dr. Russell Moore is a protege of Dr. Al Mohler. Dr. Mohler is president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary and an announced candidate for the next president of the Southern Baptist Convention. That election takes place in Orlando at the 2020 annual meeting of the Southern Baptist Convention. It's not the first time Dr. Moore has been called out for using deceptive language to further his immigration preferences. In the past, Dr. Russell Moore has lied and called Jesus a so-called illegal immigrant. That by Alan D. Atchison, first time published at Capstone Report. I have been warning, talking about me now, Southern Baptists about Moore for over 10 years. And as I watch the Southern Baptist Convention, it's almost as if they're either not paying attention or they agree with Moore's philosophy and policies. And if the majority of the Southern Baptists agree with what Moore is putting out there, what he stands for, then just what is it we're looking at here?